Hello, hello. We're gonna model this mug. This tutorial's for you if you're fairly new to Blender. So this is the reference photo I've taken. You can also use this, I'll upload it. This is what we're gonna try and make, fairly similar. We got a little bit of bump going on, and we got the logo we're gonna add in. We're also gonna obviously model the mug. Here's another render, just 360. And then if we're interested enough, we can build out a little scene too, maybe. So the modeling's not going to be too hard. It's not going to take too long, and then we will get into materials and textures for the mug. And then we will build a simple scene and then maybe get something more intricate going. So if you're new to Blender here, you'll have your first scene here with the cube. Let's just go over a couple controls, which I'll have up in the corner so you can remember. But if I ever say move, that's G on the keyboard. So if I click on the cube and hit G, you can see that it changes to some arrows and I can move it around anywhere. Undo, Command Z or Control Z. If you want to rotate, you hit R. You can just rotate. And if you want to scale, S. So if I want to move, G, and I want to move it on a certain axis, red is the x-axis, and green is the y-axis, and blue, which would be up and down, is the z-axis. So I hit G, let's hit X, so that will be constricted to the x-axis, G, Y, and same thing for G, Z. You can do that for rotation as well, or we can do it for the scaling too. Another hotkey that I should mention is changing the views. So you can go front, back, right, left, top, kind of like that. But another shortcut, if you have a numpad, each number there has a shortcut. So you can see numpad 7 is top, or if you don't have a numpad like me, you can hit tilde and then you can have the options there, but then all the numbers there, so I can hit the 7 on my keyboard and that will bring me to the front view. So let's just go ahead and press X and delete this cube. So first thing we can do here is go add image reference and just look for the reference photo, load it in. And then another way we can add things is Shift A, and we'll go mesh cylinder, and we'll have a little dialog box pop up here in the corner. So instead of 32 vertices, we're gonna go with 18. And let's keep in mind our mug is 1 meter radius, so that's a huge mug. It's gonna play a factor when you're trying to use depth of field. If you want a real world result, it's best to try and stick to the real world dimensions, but just for this, we're gonna stick to 1 meter. All right, so we can zoom in here, and let's just scale down the reference photo to match the size of our cylinder. Then I'm gonna raise it on the Z axis just a little bit. And then selecting our cylinder here, I'm gonna hit tab and go into edit mode, or you can do it up here. And then hitting 3 to go into face selection. I'm gonna click our top face and I'm just gonna delete that. Then going down to the bottom face here, I'm gonna select it and hit I to inset. So we're gonna do that 3 times. And then delete that middle face, hit 2 for edge selection, and holding Option or Alt, we're gonna click that middle ring, go up to face, and we will grid fill. So this is the basis for our mug. It's looking pretty good. We're gonna add some thickness to it. But first, let's make this top little lip here. So going back into front view, hitting 1 for vertices. I'm just gonna option click this top ring and extrude it, hitting E and on the Z axis. I'm gonna scale it up just a little bit and hit E again to extrude and scale it out. Bring it down on the Z axis and then extruding one more time on the Z axis, and I'm gonna scale that in and then maybe bring it up just a little bit. The loop cut on the side, we'll select it and just click with this dialog box. Let's select 11 cuts, so that will help us when we're creating the handle here. So getting out of edit mode into object mode, we're going to go over to the modifier panel and add a modifier. Under generate, we're going to look for solidify. So what that will do is actually make our object solid instead of one single plane. So if I were to turn this off and select just like this face here, you can see the inside is selected. But with this, we're adding some thickness, so that's what we want. So let's just get out of edit mode and apply that really quick. And then we can apply another modifier, subdivision surface here. Let's maybe turn it up to 3 along with the render. It's looking pretty good. We can go back into edit mode. Let's just click on the vertices. And then let's look where our handles are going to be coming out. So I'm happy with these 2 spots. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to inset hitting I again. I'm going to scale it just slightly on the y-axis to make our handle not as thick. And then I'm going to hit E to extrude. So that's looking pretty good. So we have those 2 faces selected. Go into front view here. I'm just going to select the top face. So with that selected, I'm going to hit G, Shift Y, and what that will do is allow me to move around on the X and Z axis and not the Y, which is what we want. So I'm just going to move this around, but I will rotate on the Y axis the face. So from here, what I can do is press and hold Control while right clicking, and what that will do is extrude the face to the point that I'm clicking at. So holding Control, I'm just going to double click in a couple of these kind of turning points, I would say. So just holding Control and click, kind of find the spots. That's looking pretty good. And then with that face so selected, holding Shift, I'm going to select this front face too and go edge, bridge edge loops. So then hitting 2, I'm going to go into edge selection, and what we can do is we can turn on X-ray if we want to see better. We can, holding Option or Alt, we're going to click, and that will select this whole ring. So what we want to do there is G, Shift Y again, so then we can just move around our handle till it fits more of the handle from the reference photo. So you can kind of just do this to your desire. It doesn't have to be insanely accurate. It's kind of a rough handle to begin with anyway. So let's just hop out of X-ray mode. So this is looking pretty good. And another thing, we can just select our cylinder, right click, and we can shade it smooth just to help with some of the shading. One last thing we can do here is go into edit mode, and let's make a loop cut down the middle on the inside of our handle here, and Command B so we can bevel it out. So let's just make a little bit of a gap there, and then go into the selection box and hitting 3 for face selection. I'm just going to select these faces here. And then what I'm going to do is hit Option E to extrude the faces along normals. So I'm going to push it out. I don't want it to be coming through. So we're just going to find a nice spot. That looks pretty good. So then one last thing we can do here is we want to get rid of these lines because of the shading. You can see it flattens it out. So hitting 2 and then holding Option, let's just click on this line, and then Shift, Option clicking for this line. Then we will hit X. And instead of deleting, what we're going to do is dissolve. So it will solve basically our topology, getting rid of those lines. And there we go. So this is looking good. Now we can move on to adding some material to our mug here. So what we can do is just hop into the shading tab over here. We'll set it all up for us. We don't have to worry about scene lights or anything yet. And let's add a new material in our shader nodes here. So we'll pop up a little principal shader here for us to start off. And what we're going to do first is Shift A to search, and we're going to look for a noise texture. And then let's go up to Edit and Preferences and just search for Node Wrangler and make sure that is selected. This is kind of a hotkey for some easy nodes that we'll need to add on. So with the noise texture selected, I'm going to hit Control T, and those are the extra nodes from the Node Wrangler. It's a texture coordinate and a mapping. We don't have to touch these, we can just leave them. And then what we will do is Shift A and look for a color ramp. We'll make some room here in our nodes. We're going to connect the color of the noise texture to the factor of the color ramp, and then the color of the color ramp to the base color of the principal shader. So you can see our noise here. We can maybe turn up the black value to see a little bit more contrast. So what we're going to have to do is raise up the scale of our noise texture. Remember, we're trying to get these little white speckles here. So let's raise it up maybe to around 80. And then what we're gonna do is just pull up the black value until it covers enough of it where we're starting to get some white speckles. So this is looking pretty good. You can zoom in here. Some other things we can do under the noise texture is turn down the detail to 1. It'll kind of round them out a little bit more. Also made them a little bigger, so I'm going to bring the black value up a little bit more. And I'll turn maybe the roughness down to 0.3, but you can just play around with it, see what you like to try and get what we're recreating here. Maybe they're still a little too big. Maybe something like that. And then what we can do is highlight all of these and Shift D to duplicate it and drag it down here. And then I'm going to Shift A and search for a bump map. I'm going to connect the bottom color ramp color to the height of the bump, and then this normal to the normal. So that will give some bump to our little speckles here. That's looking pretty good. One thing we can do for this bottom one is maybe drag the black value down a little bit so it has a little bit that it is going to mix. There we go. And we can turn down the detail for this one to 0 just to add a little bit of difference to the bump here. So this is looking pretty good. Very bumpy though. So we can turn down the strength of the bump to something like 0.05, keep it pretty minimal. That's looking pretty good. So we can go back up to the color ramp here and we can try and get a nice color. You can really change it whatever color you want. I'll try and keep it somewhat similar to what we have here. Might just take a little to find. That's looking pretty good to me. I'm happy with this. So what we can do is let's add a little bit of extra details here. So under our principal shader, we are dealing with a metal, although it's not as metallic-y as a full metallic. So what we're gonna do is just keep it on slightly, but what we're gonna add here is a coat. It will be like kind of a shiny coat, so somewhat similar to what we are working with here, but we're only gonna have just a little bit, maybe 0.12. You can play around to find what you're happy with, and same with the roughness. You can play around and just see what you're happy with. So it's got some shine to it, but there's still some roughness to here. And remember, we are making a mock-up, so we do want to make this look nice and pretty. We could add in scratch details, but generally for a mock-up, it's not exactly what we're going for. So I'm happy with this. Let's get that logo on there. So let's just add some room. What I'm going to do is hit Shift A and search for a image texture. And what we can do is Control T to add those extra nodes in. And then we are going to look for a mix color here. And we can actually just drag it on top of our color ramp here and it will plug it in. And we can plug our image texture into B. And let's just find where we saved our logo. Open it up here. It's looking huge. One thing we're gonna do really quick is change the logo from repeat to clip, so we only have it once. And then we can go over to the UV editing tab. We won't have to UV unwrap actually, so this will be pretty easy. So on the right side here with your mesh and edit mode, hit A to select all the faces, and zooming out on the left side here, we can see our logo. We could turn on the viewport shading here so we can see what we're doing. So now we can see the logo on the left hand side. Let's hit A to select all the UVs and let's get this logo in place. So I'm going to scale it up and hit G just to move it around. I'm going to keep scaling till we get somewhere where we want. You can see the logo is pretty squished. Our UVs are not quite the same. So I'm just going to scale it on the Y axis, which will scale it up on our mesh. Scaling up our UVs just a little bit more. And just kind of getting it into place. You can play around at this point for whatever you're happy with and whatever your logo is. I'm liking this. I think I'm gonna keep it at this. We're happy with that. I'm gonna go back to the layout. Let's just turn on the viewport. So this is looking pretty good so far. I'm happy with this. Let's move forward with the mock-up. So we can turn off our reference photo for now. We don't really need it anymore. And let's just go to our object properties and let's just raise this up to 1. So we're kind of on the baseline here. And then what we can do is add a plane. Let's scale that up by 10, just hitting 10 on the keyboard when you hit S. I'm gonna hop into edit mode, hitting tab and 2 for edge selection. So I'm gonna select this far edge. I'm gonna hit E and Z to extrude it. And then selecting that edge again, I'm gonna command B to bevel. I'm gonna drag it out, and then let's add some more segments into that. That's looking pretty good. Another thing you can do, I'll just show you guys with this mug. So I'm gonna bring it up on the Z-axis. So if you want to get it perfectly level to the backdrop here, what you can do is turn on this magnet and you can turn different snap to variables. So we're gonna go snap to face. So when I select the mug and I hit G, it will automatically select the face of the backdrop here. Just remember to turn off the magnet when you're done using it. Let's check out where our camera's at. So let's go view active camera here. If I hit N, the property panels will come out here and we can go to view. And let's go lock the camera to view. So let's just kind of move the camera around here. And then we can actually check out our camera properties here. Let's change the X rotation to 90, highlight the X and Y, and let's just go 0. And we can also just play around with the positioning here. Maybe bring in on the Y. I'm liking this right now, so then I'm gonna actually select our light. You can also select over here, and let's just delete that light for now. And I'm gonna select our mug here and shift D to duplicate it. And I'm gonna push it back on the Y axis. And then I'm gonna bring it out on the X. Let's turn off the camera lock so we can see. And then I'm gonna hit RZ 180. Oh, one thing I forgot to show you guys. So let's take the logo off of these mugs. So with our mug selected, what I'm gonna do, face selection, just highlight the inside faces here. It won't be selecting the outside. That's not the outside, don't worry. So if we go back to UV editing and I just move this away, move it off of the logo, and we go back here, our logo is gone, but still on the outside. So let's just delete this mug and let's just duplicate this one since we just did that. Put it back in position. Check out our camera view here. So that's looking pretty good. Maybe adjust the camera a little bit. All right, now we can go to our render properties here and let's change it from EV to cycles. I'm gonna turn on my GPU. Let's see, so our scene is super dark because we have no lights. So we're gonna go add light. Take me a minute. Let's just add an area light to keep it simple for now. I'm gonna scale it up and then just bring it up pretty much overhead. I might even rotate on the X axis just a little bit. If you want to get a second view of what's going on, you can go up to any corner here and just create a new panel. So maybe we want to see this from like the top view, or maybe I just want to move this scene around so I can see what's going on. So maybe let's move this light back on the Y and then up on the Z a bit, and then rotate it on the X. And then let's pump some power into it. Let's try 1500. That's looking pretty good. Oops. So I just hit it by hitting H by mistake. If you hit Option H, it will bring it back. And we'll bring back everything. So let's just turn off that reference photo. Maybe even turn it up a little bit more. And this is where your creativity will come in for your mock-ups here. You can kind of choose how you want to mock it up. One last thing I will show you though is the camera perspective here. So we can change the camera focal length if we wanted. We'll just leave it at 50. It's a good prime to have, but we will turn on depth of field. And what I'm gonna do is add in a mesh icosphere here. Doesn't matter, any mesh you want you can add in. I'm just gonna scale it down, raise it up, and then bring it forward. I'm basically lining it up with the beaver. So I will be using this as my point of reference for my depth of field and focusing, because if I choose the mug to focus on, it's I'm gonna be doing a small depth of field, so your beaver might not be fully in focus. So I find this way just be a little easier. So once we turned on depth of field, we can just hit the eyedrop and select the icosphere. And then I'm just going to turn off the icosphere for the render and the viewport shading. So let's turn down the f-stop. So remember how we made our mug at 1 meter? This is a huge mug. We could scale down our scene and make it more accurate, or we can play around with the f-stop and just figure out what works. Again, if you want a more realistic result, it would be good to scale it down, but just for this purpose, we're gonna leave it. And there we go. This is looking pretty good. I probably said that 20 times throughout this tutorial, but not too bad. I maybe want to scale it down on the Z axis just a little bit. Overall, not bad.